The Young and the Restless spoilers. Tuesday, full June 3, 2025. The anticipation around Nikki Newman's birthday celebration had transformed Genoa City into a pressure cooker of hidden motives, family secrets, and fragile alliances. Invitations had been sent with gilded elegance, the guest list curated with the utmost precision, and the Grand Phoenix Ballroom was already adorned in a cascade of white orchids and sapphire-hued crystal accents, Nikki's favorites. But beneath the glitter and silk, there was tension so thick it settled in every breath. For what was meant to be a night of festivity and honor was quickly spiraling into an unspoken battlefield between generations of Newman ambition and resentment. Nikki herself, serene in appearance and poised in tone, remained blissfully unaware of the currents swirling beneath the surface, trusting that this one evening, this one symbol of her longevity and legacy, could pass without another Newman family explosion. She was wrong. Clare Newman, still navigating the treacherous path of redemption and acceptance within the Newman family, had been desperate to make an impression. Her return to Victor's world was tentative at best. He extended civility, but never trust. And Clare, determined to break through his granite defenses, had crafted a plan. It was subtle and thoughtful. A video tribute combining archival footage of Nikki's ballet performances, her early days as a philanthropist, and private family moments captured over decades. Clare had poured herself into every detail, believing that showcasing Nikki's humanity and strength would endear her to the family patriarch. But when the lights dimmed and the tribute played before the crowd, Victor's reaction was glacial. The film, while beautifully edited, had included a brief clip of Nikki's early recovery from addiction, something Clare had meant to portray as a victory of resilience but that Victor considered a stain better left in the shadows. As the video ended and polite applause rang out, Victor leaned into Clare and, without raising his voice, made his disappointment chillingly clear. "The past doesn't belong on display, not like that." Clare's face burned. Her attempt to honor Nikki had backfired, and the disapproval in Victor's eyes haunted her more deeply than words ever could. Meanwhile, Kyle Abbott arrived fashionably late, holding a sleek, custom-designed jewelry box, a gift from Jabot, but personalized by Kyle himself. Inside rested a brooch shaped like a white rose with diamond-studded petals, meant to symbolize Nikki's enduring grace and the purity of her strength. He'd commissioned it weeks ago, intending it as both a gesture of admiration and a subtle olive branch toward Victor. After all, aligning oneself with the Newmans required more than just charm, it required calculated reverence. But Victor, ever the vigilant patriarch, regarded the gift with the cold detachment of a man scanning for weakness. To Kyle's shock, Victor didn't even feign gratitude. He gave a polite nod and turned away mid-conversation, signaling not just dismissal but disinterest. The room seemed to hold its breath as Kyle stood momentarily adrift, the box still in his hands, the weight of rejection sinking in. But that wasn't the only tension stirring the night air. Across the ballroom, Sally Spectra had just learned something that left her stunned. Billy Abbott, her complicated and often elusive partner, had made plans to leave the country, and hadn't told her. She found out not from him, but from a whisper between passing executives, one of whom let it slip that Billy was preparing for an extended trip to the European market on Jabot's behalf. Sally, her fiery red hair and bold personality usually the center of any room, felt suddenly invisible. The realization that Billy hadn't trusted her enough to share this decision was a slap in the face. She pushed through the crowd toward the balcony, trying to collect her thoughts as laughter and music swirled around her like a cruel reminder of everyone else's joy. Inside, the jazz band played with increasing fervor as guests swayed to the music, champagne glasses clinking in celebration. But beneath the celebration, alliances continued to shift. Victor, having observed Kyle's gift, Clare's tribute, and Billy's absence from Sally's side, made a silent resolution. He would not allow his granddaughter to be tied to someone so reckless, so unwilling to build something with transparency. By the end of the night, he had already scheduled a private meeting with his legal team and an investigator. He didn't need scandal, he needed leverage. He would find something on Billy Abbott, anything that could position him as a liability, and he would dismantle him before he caused any more damage to the Newman legacy. The mustache always moved quietly before he struck, and this time was no different. Michael Baldwin, once the trusted legal vanguard of the Newman empire, was feeling the chill of disfavor. After Victor refused to reinstate him as general counsel during a brief private discussion earlier that day, Michael had arrived at the gala more out of obligation than joy. He was in rare form, somber, subdued, his smile no more than a flicker beneath tired eyes. Watching Victor charm the room, cut down Kyle with a glance, and plot against Billy without breaking a sweat left Michael feeling discarded. It wasn't just about professional standing, it was about legacy, purpose, belonging. He moved to the bar quietly, pouring himself a drink he didn't want. It was then that Lauren Fenmore found him. Dressed in a silver gown that shimmered under the chandeliers, Lauren joined him with the grace of a woman who had learned long ago how to read between the lines. She didn't ask what was wrong, she simply touched his hand and said, "Let them play their games. You and I, we've survived much worse." And in that moment, Michael let the bitterness soften. He smiled, not because the pain was gone, but because someone had reminded him who he still was. Back on the dance floor, the night rolled forward with relentless cheer. Nikki, radiant in a sapphire gown, glided between guests with practiced warmth, unaware of the shadows closing in around her celebration. She thanked Kyle for the gift without realizing the snub it had caused. She hugged Claire, blissfully unaware of the young woman's heartbreak. She spoke kindly of Sally, not knowing the woman had locked herself in a restroom stall moments earlier, blinking back tears of betrayal. And when she toasted to family, love, and new beginnings, the irony hung in the air like smoke. Because behind every clink of crystal and every polished smile, betrayal brewed. As the night wound down, Adam and Chelsea's earlier scandal surrounding the Dumas message still lingered in the back of Victor's mind. The mystery of whether it had been a calculated hoax or the real Dumas asserting his presence remained unresolved, and that uncertainty gnawed at Victor's confidence. He could feel the empire shifting, ever so slightly, beneath his feet. And while he would not show it, the idea that power could be slipping through his grasp left him more volatile than ever. By midnight, the crowd had thinned, but the consequences of the night had only just begun to crystallize. Claire retreated to the garden, wondering if she would ever be seen as more than a reminder of the family's darkest hour. Kyle left without saying goodbye, his pride wounded. Sally sat silently beside Billy in the limo ride home, questioning everything. Michael and Lauren walked hand in hand toward the car, quietly stronger for having weathered another storm. And Victor? Victor Newman stood alone on the rooftop, staring out at the city he had helped shape, the dynasty he had built, and the future he now questioned. His eyes narrowed as he considered his next move, because if there was one truth he clung to above all others, it was this: family may bend, but it never breaks, unless someone forces it to. And he, Victor Newman, would make damn sure it wasn't going to be Billy Abbott, Claire Newman, or Aristotle Dumas who tried. The party may have ended, but the war had only just begun. As the echoes of jazz faded into the late hours of Nikki Newman's glittering birthday celebration, the glimmering facade of elegance could no longer mask the cracks forming beneath the surface. Genoa City's elite mingled, smiled, posed for photos, but behind every compliment and glass of champagne was a building storm, especially between Billy Abbott and Sally Spectra, whose relationship teetered on the edge of fracture. Billy had slipped away earlier in the evening, a man clearly burdened by more than social obligations. He stood by the balcony, the city lights washing over his face as if he were trying to find clarity in the skyline. Sally found him there, her striking figure silhouetted by the party's glow, her arms folded, her patience gone. "So it's true," she said, voice low but sharp. "You're leaving the country. While everything here is spinning out of control, you're just going to disappear." Billy turned to her slowly, guilt dancing in his eyes but veiled beneath a calm exterior. "Sally, this isn't about running. It's about understanding what we're up against. Dumas isn't just a name in the shadows anymore. He's real, or someone pretending to be, convincingly enough to shake Victor, and maybe the whole media empire. I need to know what he wants, what he's planning. But what about me? Sally's voice cracked ever so slightly, pain slicing through her bravado. What about the company we built? Abbott Communications needs stability. I need stability. You said this meant something to you, I mean something to you. Her words weren't accusations, they were the raw edge of disappointment. And yet you're still ready to vanish. In the middle of all this chaos, when we're vulnerable. Billy reached for her hand, but she pulled back, unwilling to be soothed by empty promises. I care about you, he said softly. I care about all of this. But I can't just sit here and wait for Dumas to burn everything down around us. If there's something coming, if we're being targeted, I need to be ahead of it. Sally shook her head, stepping away from him. You're chasing a ghost, Billy. You're risking everything we've built for a phantom. She didn't wait for an answer. Instead, she turned and walked into the crowd, her heels clicking like warning shots against the ballroom floor. The next day, Sally met with Phyllis Summers at the Grand Phoenix Bar, seeking clarity, or perhaps confirmation of her worst fears. Over wine and whispered worries, she confided in Phyllis about Billy's secretive departure plans and her growing frustration. Phyllis, never one to mince words, told her that Billy had always carried an impulse for self-destruction. He dives into the deep end before checking the water, she said. And if you're not careful, he'll drag you under with him. Later that night, when Sally confronted Billy again in his office, the air between them was combustible. You couldn't even tell me to my face, she hissed, slamming the file folder onto his desk. You let me hear it from strangers. You want to chase Dumas? Fine. But don't pretend this is about protecting us. This is about you, and your need to prove something to Victor, to Jack, to the entire damn world. Billy's frustration boiled over. You think this is easy for me, he shouted. You think I want to leave you, or the company, or the progress we've made? But this Dumas situation is bigger than us. If we're not careful, we'll be playing defense for the next year. I'm trying to stop that before it starts. Sally's hands trembled at her sides. You keep saying we, but you've made every choice without me. So stop pretending we're partners. For a split second, it seemed like they might explode, one wrong word away from something ugly. Billy stepped toward her, but Sally stood her ground, her eyes flashing. Don't. You're not the man I thought you were. But even as that confrontation left emotional wreckage in its wake, the party's aftermath revealed other storms brewing. Across town, Chelsea Lawson found herself face-to-face with Adam Newman in a room thick with unspoken resentment. The fallout from their fabricated Aristotle Dumas scheme still lingered like poison in the walls. Adam had remained defensive, trying to justify the deceit, but Chelsea had run out of patience. You used my creativity, my ideas, my name, she said coldly. All to wage a war against your father and protect Billy of all people? And you didn't even ask if I wanted to be part of that risk. Adam, normally sharp-tongued and swift to deflect blame, stood silent. Chelsea took a deep breath. We were supposed to be partners again. This time it was supposed to be different. But you're still the same Adam, always 3 moves ahead, but never looking back to see who's bleeding behind you. Elsewhere, Tessa Porter sat with Mariah Copeland at Crimson Lights, her gaze fixed, her voice steady but intense. I need you to be honest with me, she said. Are you happy? Really happy? Or are you just surviving again? Mariah looked down into her coffee, the weight of motherhood, work, and pressure gnawing at the corners of her smile. I'm trying, she whispered. Every day I'm trying. But sometimes I miss us, just us. Tessa reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Then maybe it's time we stop surviving and start rebuilding, together. Meanwhile, Amy Lewis found herself staring at her own reflection in a compact mirror, tucked away in a bathroom stall at Society. Her career, her relationships, and her health had all converged into a crossroads she could no longer avoid. She texted her manager and quit on the spot. The decision was terrifying. But for the first time in weeks, she felt free. Back at the Newman Ranch, Victoria watched the footage from Nikki's gala on her phone, rewinding a moment where Cole stood by the buffet table, smiling faintly but looking pale. The camera caught him mid-cough, and though he tried to conceal it with a napkin, the convulsion racked his body longer than it should have. She confronted him gently earlier that night, placing a hand on his arm. "Are you okay?" she'd asked, eyes full of concern. Cole had smiled and waved her off. "I'm fine, Vic. Just a tickle in the throat." But now, seeing it again from a third-party angle, the tickle looked far more ominous. Later, Adam had approached Cole casually with a glass of bourbon in hand and, with a sardonic smile, said, "You look like hell. Maybe don't die at the birthday party, Victor won't like that on the guest list." It had been a joke, but Victoria couldn't shake the feeling that something serious was wrong. When Cole nearly collapsed leaving the ballroom, coughing violently into his sleeve, she finally broke. She turned to Nikki, her voice tight with panic. "Mom, he's not okay. He's really not okay." Nikki, always composed, reached for her daughter and held her. "Then we'll do what we always do, darling. We'll fight. And we'll face it, together." But even as mother and daughter clung to hope, the storm was far from over. Victor's suspicions about everyone, Billy, Adam, Claire, even Kyle, had grown. He began compiling a private list of individuals he would soon test. Trust was no longer assumed. It would have to be earned, the hard way. By the week's end, the ballroom that had once shimmered with light and music stood quiet, its chandeliers casting long, somber shadows on an empty floor. But the consequences of that party, the betrayals, confessions, illnesses, and decisions, echoed louder than any celebration ever could. The war for power, love, and legacy in Genoa City was just beginning to smolder. And no one, not even Victor Newman himself, would escape untouched.